Hello, I'm Joanne Taff, and I'm delighted to have with me George Glass, TM Forum's Chief Technology Officer, who's fresh back from Accelerate in Portugal. And that brings together members of TM Forum's collaboration teams who work for telcos and their suppliers around the world to work on new technology solutions. So, George, what were the primary aims of this year's Accelerate?
So Accelerate is all about getting our members together face to face so that they can collaborate on the production of shared assets that we'll be publishing then for our members to consume and use as part of their transformation projects going on within their organizations. We always split it out into 5 or 6 work streams, and that allows people then to focus in on specific areas, typically where they've been collaborating with us previously on our weekly projects and actually getting face-to-face to accelerate, hence the name, the business outcomes that we're trying to deliver through these collaborative efforts.
So you mentioned there were like 5 different streams. Can you give some examples of some of this week's highlights or some of the achievements of the different teams?
Absolutely. So if we look at what we start off with around ODA, the Cloud Native IT and Networks, and the API team, which many people will be aware of, the TM Forum works on its industry standard open APIs. And within that space, we've actually developed the API async design pattern. That's for asynchronous APIs, and that's based on a catalyst that we ran at DTW, our flagship event in Copenhagen. And we've taken that outcome and we've actually applied the pattern so it enables all APIs to be both REST-based and event-based. That's a big step forward for us in terms of a deliverable there. Also, the component teams. So this is where we're componentizing the architecture within ODA. Working collaborative, they actually managed to complete the specification of 2 components, one around lead and opportunity management and one around service performance management. But then even taking that a stage further, whenever you're building ODA, you need a canvas or a development environment and a runtime environment to deploy the components into. And the team have been focusing on completing the specification of the canvas and the canvas services. So they were working on the authentication service and looked at how the canvas will reduce the work required for loading a well-defined component onto the canvas. And we've based the work that we're doing on authentication on existing services. So based on OAuth from the IETF. So that's just an example in one area around ODA of things that we're working on.
Okay, Grant, just to go back to, you mentioned these sort of asynchronous patterns. What are the business benefits of that?
Well, whenever you look at an architecture, a lot of the initial services that we designed were synchronous. So you sent out a response and you waited for a request to come back. If you move to an event-based architecture, then you actually need the concept of an asynchronous API where I can send out the response and move on to the next task, not pausing the workflow or the journey waiting for the response from that initial request. And eventually, whenever the response comes back, reacting to it whenever I get that response. So for a microservice-based architecture and a modern event-based architecture, it's essential that you have asynchronous APIs available for the designers and the developers to actually build such an architecture.
Okay, now that sounds important. And with the ODA as well, just again wondering how this serves members and again the business benefits of looking at the work you're doing this week.
So a lot of what we're doing this week is to actually enable our members to take their transformation projects, their implementation projects to the next level or to the next step. So the work we've been doing in ODA initially started in the IT space, but over the last 2 or 3 years, we've been expanding into the network space with the work that we've done around autonomous networks. And we've defined the industry standard for the levels of autonomy within your network from level 0 through to level 5. Most of our members are aiming for a level 3 or maybe even some starting to hint they'll aim for a level 4 autonomous network by 2025. What the team have been doing is, for example, taking those loose definitions, tightening up the definitions of what each level means, And then also looking at things like key effective indicators for an autonomous network at level 2 or level 3, so that you can assess the maturity of your autonomous network. That actually allows us then to develop an autonomous operations maturity model, and the team are working on the dimensions and sub-dimensions of that, so that we can actually help our members on that network transformation as part of their adoption of ODA. So what you're actually starting to see is this technical work that we do actually allows members to measure where they are and work on what steps they need to take to get to the next level. All of those different pieces of work are about driving business outcomes. So giving you a more agile architecture, giving an architecture that is delivering faster time to market or faster time to value, having it rules and data driven so that you can actually make changes and deliver new business capabilities without having to go through long software development and test lifecycle processes. So it's all about creating and delivering business agility for our members.
And I suppose that'll become important as more telcos start to deliver things like network as a service and look toward network slicing and all the sorts of new ways to sort of generate revenues and monetize their networks.
Absolutely. And actually a very interesting fallout or side product from that is the work that we've done in around our human factors. So looking at, yes, it's a technical transformation, but we always explain it as a business transformation affecting systems, people, process, and data. And it's the people angle that's generated a lot of interest. We had a digital organizational transformation program running, and we've just inflected that. And actually, we're now launching it as a technical organizational design, TOD, which is actually dot backwards. But what that's actually looking at is the systems, the people associated with the transformation that you need. And we've looked at it under 3 areas, or 3 key areas. As you move from being a telco to a techco, we need to change the skills and competencies. We need to look at the culture and value, and we need to look at the organizational design to enable our members to deliver these new digital services. And that's going to be picked up under this technical organization design work that we're doing in the human factors area.
Okay, interesting. All right, great. That I've raced you through some of the highlights of it. Accelerate there, George. What are you planning for the next few months, and how do people get involved?
Well, for the next few months, I think you need to think about it also in terms of ODA for growth. So not only about changing internally, how you actually deliver new digital services, so digital efficiency, but also taking those digital services and exposing those externally into marketplaces and actually having other partners come on board and use those services to create new, exciting products and services. And that's under what we call our digital ecosystem management area. And we're expanding that work to help our members design IoT services and IoT solutions based on ODA. So really driving a growth agenda out of ODA as well. So for any members interested in getting involved in the TM Forum, then come to our website, look for the projects that are relevant to the work that you're doing, and then join the project. Or there's 2 ways you can do it. One is by actually becoming a producer or consumer on the actual project. So sign up to the project and you can actually track everything that the teams are working on collaboratively and even get early insight before we produce the final deliverables. But really, to have most influence in the market, come and actually join us, help us develop those assets. We crowdsource them. We want you to be involved with us in developing those assets. So actually participate in the weekly project calls. We'll be running face-to-face workshops and virtual workshops to accelerate the work. And we'd just love to have our members on board working with us, collaboratively transforming the future of our industry.
That's great. Well, brilliant. Well, thanks very much for your time, George. And speak soon. Okay.